Okay, today we're diving into something called adult attachment theory. The best way to think about it, it's kind of like the original blueprint for all your relationships, a subconscious guide that shapes how you connect with the people you care about the most.
And it all starts with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why do I keep falling into the same relationship patterns? Hitting the same walls, feeling the same exact frustrations time and time again?
Well, the answer just might be hidden in an emotional blueprint that was drafted when you were just an infant, long before you ever even thought about love or romance. To really get a handle on our adult relationships, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, with the theory's original blueprint, that powerful bond between a child and their caregiver.
The founder of attachment theory, a guy named Bowlby, he argued that this deep emotional need for connection isn't just for babies. He put it perfectly. It's a core part of our lives from the cradle to the grave. So how does this whole system actually work? Well, it's like a thermostat, but for safety. When an infant feels secure with their caregiver right there, they're free to just play and explore. But if they sense a threat, like being left alone, the whole system just kicks in. They'll start crying, or searching, or clinging. These are all just instinctual behaviors designed to do one thing: close that distance and get that feeling of security back.
And for decades, people thought this was just a theory about kids. But then, in the 1980s, researchers had this huge realization. This exact same system, this deep drive to stay close to a secure base, is what runs our adult love lives. Our romantic partners, they become our main attachment figures.
And this is pretty wild. This is incredibly rare in the animal kingdom. Fewer than 3% of all mammalian species actually form these kinds of long-term pair bonds. It seems like evolution basically co-opted this whole system for us humans to help us stick together, raise our kids, and, well, make sure we survive.
So, if we all have the system hardwired into us, why are our relationship patterns so incredibly different from person to person? To understand that, we need to look past simple categories and into two key dimensions that really shape our personal attachment blueprints: anxiety and avoidance. Now, the first attempts to map out adult attachment just used three broad labels. You were either secure, anxious, or avoidant. But as research has shown, our internal blueprints are way more nuanced than that. It turns out a two-dimensional model is much more accurate for capturing the real differences between people. The first of those dimensions is attachment anxiety. I want you to think of this as the sensitivity dial on your internal threat detector. So, if you're high in anxiety, you're going to be hyper-vigilant for any tiny sign of rejection, constantly worrying, is my partner really going to be there for me when I need them?
And the second dimension is attachment avoidance. Now, this is all about how you respond to that threat. If you're high in avoidance, you're just not comfortable with closeness and depending on other people. You might even suppress your own emotional needs just to keep some distance and hang on to that sense of self-reliance.
Okay, so what happens when you put these two dimensions together? Well, you get a map, and on that map are four distinct quadrants, which represent the four modern attachment styles. Your personal style is really just where you happen to land on this map. And it's important to remember, it's not some rigid box. It's more like a general region that describes your tendencies in relationships. First up, we have secure attachment. This is really the sweet spot: low anxiety and low avoidance. Secure people tend to see themselves and others in a positive light. They're totally comfortable with both intimacy and independence, and they just navigate relationships with a general sense of trust and confidence.
Next is the preoccupied style, which you might also hear called anxious-preoccupied. So here we've got high anxiety, but low avoidance. These folks really crave closeness, but they're just plagued by insecurity. Their intense need for validation and that fear of being abandoned can, just like the description says, sometimes overwhelm their partners and scare them away.
Then we have the dismissing style, or dismissing-avoidant. This is the total opposite corner: low anxiety but high avoidance. Dismissing individuals are, you could say, compulsively self-reliant. They push down their own attachment needs to avoid feeling vulnerable, and they often come across as emotionally distant, valuing their independence above everything else.
And finally, there's the fearful style, or fearful-avoidant. This one combines both high anxiety and high avoidance. People here are really caught in a painful conflict. They deeply want an intimate connection, but at the same time, they're terrified of getting hurt if they get too close. This can lead to this really confusing push-pull dynamic where they're both seeking out intimacy and then retreating from it.
Now, I know hearing all this might feel a little deterministic, like you're stuck. But here's the most crucial point to understand. Your attachment style is a blueprint. It is not an unchangeable destiny.
And here's why. The link between how we were as infants and how we are as adults is actually only moderate. Our blueprints are constantly being revised by new experiences. For example, a really positive, stable relationship can absolutely help an insecure person build more security over time. So this isn't a life sentence, not at all. Think of it as a tool for self-awareness. It gives you the power to understand your tendencies and then consciously decide to renovate your own blueprint.
So, by understanding the original drawings of your relationship blueprint, you suddenly have the ability to make conscious renovations. You can start to see your patterns not as your fate, but as a starting point. And that really leaves us with one final question. Now that you can read your blueprint, what will you choose to build?